My boss wasn't happy with me, but we made up. But at the time, I was almost going to get fired. I pretty much was handing this in and saying, "Just let me finish, and then you can fire me," because I was in trouble.
John Beck-Hofmann, how you doing?
It's been a minute, huh?
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. We go, obviously we go back to our LA days.
Yeah.
I mean, you still go out there. I haven't been out there for a few years, but I'm curious. I know your story a little bit because, obviously we've known each other for a long time, but can you just explain to everyone, what was your motivation moving to LA? Was it to be an actor, a musician, director? What inspired you to move to Hollywood?
Well, ever since I was a little kid, of course, I wanted to be a filmmaker and a composer, actually. I wanted to do both, but I had a music scholarship to go to Azusa Pacific University, so I took that. But, when I was in college, we didn't have a film class at all. And it was a long time ago, so the only thing we had was a cheesy video camera. It was VHS. And I played around with that, and I made my first film. It's hard to call it a film when you're shooting on a VHS tape,
right.
But and I couldn't even edit it. I had to edit it in the camera, which means, we screwed up. I got to rewind back to where the screw up was and hit record. And so there's all these glitches in it. It's classic.
So you you're out in Los Angeles. So how long from when you moved to Los Angeles did you start at JPL? And can you tell what JPL is? Yeah,
the Jet Propulsion Lab, which is run by NASA. JPL does all the unmanned missions, all the robotic missions. And I took an acting class. My roommate, who was a tennis player, came home one day and he said, "Hey, there's this acting class in Hollywood. It's like the first week is free. So you want to check it out?" And I was like, okay. So we went and checked it out. I ended up taking the class. He didn't. But my scene partner, after a few months, one of the scenes I was working with, she said, "Hey, you're looking for a job. I work at JPL. I can probably get you a job there." And so I was like, okay. And so I went and interviewed there, and I got a job. And yeah, thanks to my tennis player roommate that got me in that class and my scene partner, I ended up, my first real job was at NASA. I mean, that's pretty cool.
That is awesome. So can you tell everybody kind of what you did there?
So, well, when I started, I worked on the Mars Observer mission. I was just a clerk. But a couple years into it, they had a logo design contest, and I ended up winning that. And because of that, I ended up meeting someone in the TV studio, and he was working on a video about the mission. He let me do the music for it. And then shortly after that, the mission ended because the spacecraft blew up. The day it was supposed to arrive at Mars, it disappeared. So we all lost our jobs. But a year and a half later, I was able to get a job in that TV studio working for my friend Gary. And that's really where things started happening. So were you always interested? Did you ever think that I'm going to be a documentary filmmaker? Was that on the top of the list? No, I wanted to make Star Wars. That was what every kid wanted, at least, that grew up around the time Star Wars came out. So, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, either one of those. But I was, I basically, they gave me a job documenting the Mars Pathfinder mission. And back then, NASA didn't make anything dramatic. It was just really dry documenting things, people in bunny suits, the clean room suits. We called them bunny suits. They'd be putting the spacecraft together, really dry, no personalities at all. But But as I was following these people around, and especially during landing night, seeing them just screaming because it was successful and crying and hugging each other, I thought, man, these people are, I've never seen this side of NASA before. You never saw people like crying and hugging each other, it was just sterile. Because that's just kind of the way it was, because, this is government, this is taxpayer money. They didn't want to, they felt like doing something dramatic would feel manipulative or propaganda-like, so they wanted to keep it very cut and dry and give, that footage to the media. But it was working on that mission. I just was so blessed to be put in the mission control room on landing night, and that I was so inspired by that night. I couldn't go home and sleep. Went right to the TV studio and edited together a little tribute video, and that got shown at a press conference. And that day is what totally changed my career, because NASA headquarters loved the video. Everyone loved the video. They let me do a documentary on the mission the following year, and that kind of just propelled my career there at JPL, documenting the Spirit and Opportunity missions and the Curiosity rover, and
Well, we're going to come
really
back.
cool.
We're going to come back to that. So my next question is, so I know Jacob's going to chime in here in a second, but we met during Tyranny. You were shooting that TV show. To this day, I felt like that was so far ahead of its time.
Target is on foot, approaching federal building on market.
And especially because it was kind of wouldn't you say, the dawn of web series? Everything, TV shows, YouTube was starting to pay for branding on social media platforms. So how did you start Tyranny? What's it about? And can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, well, Tyranny started out as a feature film project. That was like my baby. Started writing the script in 1999. It was about the future, which was 2013. Not the future anymore, but at the time, 2013 seemed a long ways away. So I had a cast. I took them to Prague. We were shooting all these scenes for this movie. I was paying for it all myself, aside from like a fundraiser I had, which I raised $5,000 for that. But pretty much I was bankrolling the whole thing. And unfortunately, lost a cast member. She decided to quit, and she played the lead. So I had to rewrite the story around my character, because I was originally just playing a supporting role. So I rewrote it around my character because I knew I wasn't going to quit. And and my coworker at NASA, he was making a web series called Dirty Bomb Diaries. And I was like, oh, web series, that's kind of interesting. And at that time, there was web series. There was like Lonely Girl 16, I think it was called.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. And that was, like kind of the first, I think that was the first web series.
Yep.
And then my friend Eric Totsi made Dirty Bomb Diaries, and that was in 2007. He actually cast me in a couple of the episodes, and that kind of got me inspired to be like, let's turn Tyranny into a web series, and I'll tell the pre-story, the story leading up to the film, what the story is in the movie. And I thought I'll gain an audience in the web series, and then by the time I have the movie done, then I'll have a following that'll go see the movie. And I put out a trailer in 2007.
In the year 1999, I was given a gift. A detailed vision of future events, which would occur sometime between 2011 and 2013. Now that time has come to pass, the world has fallen into chaos. As the wars continue, the collapsing economy has brought food shortages, riots, and a bioengineered pandemic, forcing those who want to survive into the hands of the committee. I ran the underground, which was preparing a last hope of a revolution against them.
And the trailer was like, got instant, like a few thousand views, which was a lot back then. And suddenly I got calls from Lionsgate and Disney, had an online company, it's called Vaguru, and a couple other companies, I can't remember the name of them, but so I got stuck in meetings with all these companies that were interested in the show. But they all kind of said the same thing. They said, John, we really love this show. It looks so good. I mean, it's a web series, but it looks like a movie. We're really interested. We don't know how to make money with it, you know? Because nobody back then was making original online content, you know.
And smart TVs wasn't invented yet. It was kind of coming around, but it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it was there yet for distribution.
There were a few companies trying to do that, and they just didn't have a good model. I think Crackle was one, and it wasn't until another online company, startup, Coldcast TV is what it was called. They called me up. They said, "Hey, we're interested. We'll give you $1,000 up front, and we'll give you some, money along the way based on views. If you get 100,000 views, you'll get this much money." And that was the best offer I had. It was practical. I was like, well, it's $1,000. It's better than nothing. They wanted me to do an episode a week, a 5-minute episode a week. So I thought, I can do it. So I think we put out maybe 5 or 6 episodes on schedule before that started slipping, because I had a full-time job,
Yeah.
Man, so that had to be a very daunting undertaking. So I imagine you probably started with a script that was more formatted as a feature.
Yeah.
But then kind of in the last minute you were like, "Hey, I'm going to make this into a web series." Do you feel like that choice put Tyranny on the map more so than it would have if you'd have kept it in a feature format?
Man, it's hard to say. It definitely lended itself towards being able to get a lot of people interested, because I was creating so many different scenes with so many different characters. I had like a cast of at least 24 different characters that were coming in.
What would I go home to?
You mentioned earlier that there were others?
I did?
Yes.
Well, let's go ahead and skip ahead to this third section. Now you're going to hear 3 different tones, and you're going to see 3 sets of crosshairs. I want you to try and match them all up somehow.
And so having it, they would post it, and so their friends would watch it, and so I had a lot of, it just kind of spread that way naturally. It's hard. You know what? I don't know, because I always think, gosh, I wish I would have finished the film, because I get so tired of telling people as every year that happens and I see like what's been going on in the, politically and socially. Right. I'm like, dude, this was in my script. This was in my script. I felt really good. Like I predicted correctly, but that wasn't, it wasn't anything in my brain as far as like prophecy. It was just, I was reading so many books. And just trying to be like, okay, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. So this was my model for the future, and man, it all came true.
That's so interesting, because I know there was a lot of novels and even TV shows that kind of depicted what the future could be like, kind of dystopian. I guess with that in mind, did you kind of have to lock in a genre during the formation and the creation of this series? Did you have to kind of say, hey, we're going to make it more sci-fi? Because I noticed in some of the scenes, there's a lot of technology on the set. Mm-hmm. And it seems like you built a set to kind of reflect what a future might look like. And the lead character is in this environment. And then at some point, he's even brought in and questioned about the FBI because he believes he's being followed, right? And, there's a lot of parallels with that and how things kind of work today when people claim to be shadow banned by social media and kind of, everybody kind of jokes, so I'm on a watch list. Were those things like kind of present in the mind back then, or is that something you had to kind of stretch to make it make sense?
It was all a stretch. I felt like no one's going to believe this. No one's going to buy this. This doesn't happen. You know,
Right.
This is so against the law. I remember way back to an earlier version of the movie script. I remember this was pre 9/11, and I was my acting teacher, Judith Weston. She was helping me, do a first run edit of the script because it was 220 pages long, and it was epic, you know. And so she's just helping me cross out things, and then there were some things with. The climate of the world in 2013 was like you're just kind of on the terrorist watch list. But, I didn't call it the Patriot Act because I didn't know, I didn't know what to call it. It's just like you were a suspected terrorist for so many reasons and had to clear yourself and do all these background checks so you could, do the short line in the airport. And I remember her asking me, she was like, John, what happened to our Constitution? This isn't legal. They can't do this. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's just how I feel the future's going to be. And then, a year later,
What do you know?
9/11 happened and the Patriot Act, and I'm like, yep, here we go.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess to some degree you had to have a little bit of political uneasiness within you as inspiration to write this, right? You kind of could maybe pick up on some signals and some hints that the future wasn't going to be as peachy as maybe people were assuming, right? So how does that world that you've created before it actually happened, how does that segue to your future projects and projects after that? Are you still bringing a little bit of that, or are you rewriting the script completely?
I'm not rewriting it completely. I actually, it's funny because even back in 2004, as watching the world change, and the film was taking longer than I thought it would take, and I made this video of myself just covered in dirt and grease and grime because I was helping weld our set together, and we were so behind schedule. And I'm looking in the camera going, by the time this movie gets done, the audience is just going to be like, yeah, tell us something we don't already know.
That's right.
Like, this is old news, man. There's good and bad in the fact that, yes, so many of these things have already come true. It lends itself towards, oh, well, now I can really push it further because I thought, oh, all these other ways I wanted to push it was way too far. People were not going to be into it. They wouldn't accept it. But now I feel like, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I don't have to stop. I don't have to keep it on the basic level of like trying to understand how the secret things work behind closed doors. Like I feel like, yeah, everyone pretty much gets that now.
Yeah.
So you don't have to explain it anymore, which kind of sucks too. Also, because I shot a lot of scenes that I'm like, well, I guess I'll have to cut that dialogue because it's almost kind of boring. But
I enjoyed our interrogation scene. That was fun to shoot.
I assume you already know this, right? And
Well, how would we know that?
because you've been following me?
Nobody's been following you, Mr. McCarthy. Why do you think that?
I mean, I've seen you guys. Everywhere I go, one of your guys shows up. I almost hit one with the car the other day.
Well, I can assure you, Mr. McCarthy, that no one is following you from this office.
Still, one of my favorite episodes is the powers that be. I think that leads into the season finale, right?
It's Holden.
Yes.
Daniel McCarthy just called me.
You're losing control of this operation.
We have everything under control.
There's like, I think that's episode 17, and then there was episode 18, and the season finale was 19.
I remember the minute he raised his voice at me, I remembered details.
I saw myself in that room. I saw him. There were other people. And I saw something. I had a vision. And
Right.
I got most of it shot, and then life happened.
Right.
Got in the way.
But you know,
So-
in between the Tyranny, seasons, I would come over to your house, and we would talk about structure, and we would talk about story, and then in that in between times, you did this amazing project. I'm still one of my biggest fans. It's called 7 Minutes of Terror.
When people look at it, it looks crazy. That's a very natural thing. When we first get word that we've touched the top of the atmosphere, the vehicle has been alive or dead on the surface for at least 7 minutes.
So after seeing that, coming into your studio, I would see you working on that. I had no idea that video would go viral and put you on, like, I guess I'm thinking off the top of my head, like Jon Stewart. You were on CBS. You're all over the place, man, with that video. Can you talk a little bit about that, man? I love that video. Loved it.
Well, you and me both, as far as never could have anticipated it was going to go viral. And that was, I can't remember how many millions of views it finally racked up. But, I mean, that's like small beans now compared to the billions that people get for going viral. But back then, that was a lot. That was a big deal. And that video, I felt like I was telling a lot of like the same stories over and over, and they were kind of falling flat. I knew I liked to focus on people's problems, like struggling to say they were fixing holes in the Mars parachutes and the airbags, and it was cool seeing that struggle. But when my boss at NASA, she wanted me to make the 7 Minutes of Terror video, and it was supposed to like focus on the science that we were going to learn at Mars and show the complications in going, but not to get all scary like that. And I was just like, man, I don't want to talk about science. And I do want to focus on how complicated it is. But for the first time, I really want to show like that they're kind of scared, like I think maybe they bit off more than they could chew, I remember I kind of just had this inspiration during a meeting, and I called up my friend Adam Stelzner, who was the main character in that video. And I said, hey, can you meet me down in the TV studio? I want to do like a rough cut of this video. And I grabbed my 1950s mid-century modern desk lamp and stuck it on a table. And so that was like how it was lit. And I said, let's just, like you and me, I just want us to pretend like we're in a bar and having a beer, and you're going to tell me the truth. And you're going to lean forward on the table and just kind of give me this, man, I don't know, I think this is crazy. Is anybody...
It really, you sold it, man, because it felt very intimate. I almost was curious, because when I first saw that clip, I was like, is this like a recreation of these actors? And then you see them actually in the control center, and it's actually the real deal. And I have a question for you. How are you able to get these engineers and these scientists to open up like that and really tap into their emotions? Because they're professionals, when the chips are down, everything's really tense, they're focused and they're professional, but they have all these emotions still, How did you encourage them to verbalize that and explain that on camera?
Well, I mean, some people are just really good on camera. Adam Stelzner's great. Like that moment when we were chatting with the desk lamp, he just nailed it the very first time. And I was like, I'm using this. I have to use it. it really helps. I mean, having taken a lot of acting classes, like I spent 16 years in acting class with my teacher, Judith Weston, doing workshops. And the more and more I took those classes and also took some improv classes, I felt like, you know, I felt like I could get that out of anybody. And I recommend everybody should take an acting class. I think it's really good, you know, for being able to communicate and be a good listener, because that's all like good acting is. It's like you got to be a great listener, and then believe that it's real, you know, not try to pretend, but really believe that this is true, what you're hearing and seeing and saying. And that's all I would tell them. Like, let's just have an honest conversation. Like, forget about trying to act or say it in a certain way. It's just you and me, you know, and we'll get there. And most of the time they would. And you know, some people just, you know, weren't that great on camera anyway. It just wasn't going to work. But the majority of the time I could get it.
Can you kind of describe what happened after you produced this? What was the reception from NASA and these big organizations? What did they think when you presented this to them?
They were, my boss wasn't happy with me, but you know, we made up, but at the time I was almost going to get fired.
So did you have 7 minutes of terror too, that you were going to get fired?
I see inspiration where the name came from.
I pretty much was handing this in and saying, just let me finish and then you can fire me.
Right.
Because I was in trouble. You know, I showed it to upper management and they were they liked it, but they were nervous. They were like, I don't know. Because if it doesn't work, it makes us look really irresponsible. And I was like, no, that's what people want, though. You know, they want to think it could fail. And, you know, it's going to be people are going to tune in either way. So
that's what I loved about it. And that's what I love, too, about being a filmmaker. So and an actor, right? You got to take risks. You have to. You may fail. It may be a bad choice, but at least you do. At least you don't play it safe. And I think, man, my tip of the cap to you for that, because most people, I mean, let's be honest, they might have played it safe and you didn't, man. So,
I mean, every movie you see is like, you know, you're hoping that they could fail. You don't want it to be easy. Can you imagine Star Wars? It's like, well, you know, we're gonna fly the ships at the Death Star, but you know, if we fail, we're gonna learn a lot of great science. You know, we're gonna find out if the Death Star had a solid core or if it was molten lava. We're gonna study its magnetic field. We're gonna learn a lot. So either way, it's gonna be a great mission.
That's one hell of a science experiment. Just throw people at it, right? Oh, man.
That's awesome, man. So I'm going to steal Jacob's question when we were chatting, but, you know, we both liked another project you did called Juno. We love the graphics and the score on that, man. What was that inspiration about?
The scariest thing to me about Juno are the unknowns. So much about the environment that we'll have to withstand is unknown. Nothing's really certain about what's going to happen.
It's a monster. It's unforgiving. It's relentless. It's spinning around so fast, its gravity is like a giant slingshot, slinging rocks, dust, electrons, whole comets. Anything that gets close to it becomes its weapon.
It was 2016, and I was freelancing at the time, still doing stuff for NASA, but after 7 Minutes of Terror was done, I actually got called by Discovery Channel, and they wanted me to work on a documentary, so I couldn't do that unless I went freelance. So the Jupiter mission, I kind of had an idea, and I called them up, and I said, hey, let's make a 7 Minutes of Terror for Juno. And that ended up being a lot more difficult than I thought. I thought, you know, I'll kind of approach it the same way, but it's just not the same mission. You know, it's an orbiter going to Jupiter. and you just don't have the same vibe of these kind of cowboy characters landing this crazy rover. You just kind of have an orbiter. And so I was like, all the interviews I did and a lot of the animation, I had this long 5-minute video, and it just was falling flat. And it was about a few days before arrival at Jupiter, and I didn't have a video. It just wasn't working. And there were 2 people that were in the video that were just like, could you just take me out? I don't want to be in it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And
that's bad.
So it was like 3 days. I think it was 3 days before arrival, and then I was like, I'm gonna go to town and edit the heck out of it, cut it up into a 2-minute movie trailer for like a sci-fi alien type of scary sci-fi movie. Put some darker music with it and take the kind of darker moments out of the interviews.
So happens deep inside this body are the secrets we're after. Secrets about our early solar system.
And I did a rough cut, presented that to them, and they were like, we love it. So I was like, okay. And they're like, can you finish it tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, I will get it done. So I wrote them.
And nothing like being under the gun to make it happen, right?
Yeah. So I literally wrote that music in, I think, 2 hours before handing it in. Like it was like, I've got 2 hours left. So I broke out my keyboard. I'm like, boom, boom. Okay, I gotta go. It's done. So,
wow, that's fascinating. You know, a lot of people, a lot of filmmakers, you know, they start off and they have to ask themselves, what kind of filmmaker do I want to be? Do I want to go union and pick a department and go on big shows, or do I want to go the indie route and kind of learn a little bit of everything and create my own projects? You're over here kind of in a niche, a very specific niche with these 2 projects, you know, science, fact, and then documentary for a major organization. So I imagine the pressure must have been insane. And how do you take that into your career as a filmmaker? Do you feel like that pressure kind of molded you into a better filmmaker at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely it did, because when I started there in 95, when I was first hired in the TV studio, you were just called a TV producer, and they just gave you a long list. You had to shoot, you had to edit, you had to light, you had to write the script, you had to meet with the clients, you had to do everything. You had to you were a one-man show, and I didn't have any. My only experience was shooting with that VHS camera. I mean, that was it. And they took a gamble on me, but I was forced to learn in that environment. I mean, thankfully, it wasn't as high pressure when I started, but it built up pretty quickly because then they started giving me bigger projects, and then it was for bigger people from NASA headquarters, and then I'm just like, I am so green. Oh my gosh. And I got in trouble quite a number of times. But that was such great training, and that one-man show training is what I took with Tyranny. Like, that's how I thought, I can do this. I can make a movie this way. And even if I was in the scenes, I would train my actors to shoot the camera and hold the boom mic. And that's how we made Tyranny the movie version that I will finish. I will. But that's how we made the web series, too. The same way.
So, John, today, you know, filmmakers come up a lot differently than they did when you first started. And what are some things that you noticed that a lot of these more modern filmmakers coming up in the industry, they don't have to deal with, that you had to deal with? Can you kind of describe this gap of you know, comeuppance in this world of filmmaking? What are some things that stand out to you? Like, man, if only these guys knew what I had to go through. Can you kind of take us on that journey, take us back to the differences you've noticed?
Well, man, the list is long. I mean, the equipment has gotten so much better because we didn't have gimbals, we didn't have drones. We didn't have 4K. You know, this was my first video camera, this 640 by 480, and this, I was so excited about this sucker. This was great. Like, it's not VHS, it's shooting on these little tapes. And then we graduated to the 5D, and then it's like, oh, look
That's
at
a game changer, the 5D.
That shallow depth of field.
Oh, man.
Everything's going to be at 2.8. Action scenes at 2.8. Let's, you know.
Lord have mercy.
We don't need to see any background. We just want to see bokeh, lights.
That's right.
Flip, nothing.
It's like,
everything blurry.
It's like only the eyeballs are in focus. His ear is just gone. You know?
Right. It was pretty razor thin, wasn't it? That focus.
You could have just shot the scene in a steam room at that point. Like, everything is so. But
I remember that.
You know, the access to information, because I had to just learn from books, like how to shoot and how to edit and how to light, and you know, and so that I kind of gave up. Books is just no way to learn cinematography and filmmaking. It's just not. You got to pick up a camera and start shooting right away and just stumble through it, because. And books are great for like storyboarding and script writing, screenwriting, you know, great. But shooting, man, you got to just pick up a camera and go. I'm a big believer.
That's great advice.
In turning on whatever lights you got, practicals, turn on some lamps, use the daylight. You know, if you want to diffuse a light, use a bed sheet, just whatever you got. No one cares, and that's what. It's so funny. Like, you put this on the end of a camera. And it's like, oh, you're big time because you've got the matte box on. And, you know, it's kind of all about perception when you got the big rig. And I get really jealous. You get camera envy when you see the big cinematographers with the giant. I was like, when am I going to get that? Everything I feel like I'm always shooting on something compact. But at the end of the day, no one cares, you know, except for behind the scenes footage. But they're watching the movie, and if you can make that movie look good, no one cares if, well, guess what, guys? I shot it on this. Like,
right.
And
it's all
speaking
about
of,
the
have you
story,
seen any of the behind the scenes? And all about the story. There's Apple does behind the scenes whenever they do the shot on iPhone campaigns when they release a new phone.
Yeah.
And they'll bring in cinematographers. It blows me away to see an iPhone on an O'Connor tripod head. It's like, hey, all right, that's pretty awesome, you know. But they using the industry standard tools, like you would on any set from the 1920s all the way until now. The only thing that changes are, you know, the sensor or the medium, and sometimes not even the lenses, you know. But I guess in the case of iPhone, it's iPhone lenses. But you know, it's fascinating how far film has come, and I think. Today, it's so easy to get lost and like more of an analysis paralysis. You said something that stood out to me, you know, the age of information, you know, the world at your fingertips, all this knowledge, you know, I think sometimes it's easy to get stuck overthinking and overlearning. Yeah. And I think you said it best. Sometimes you just got to go out and grab the camera and start creating.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference in the world. It's
so
the best school you can get.
I've gotten mad at myself.
Speaking of one-man bands and create... Sorry, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I've gotten mad at myself for not just shooting. You know, you kind of get scared sometimes. You just feel like, it's not going to look good enough. It's not going to look good enough. And at the end of the day, it's like sometimes you're doing these tight shots anyway. You didn't need this big set. You spent all this time and money and effort to get this set idea, and you end up getting this shot. You know, and you could have done it so simply. It's all about the story and the acting, and just get good audio and get great performances.
That's a big one.
Get great performances with great audio. And if you got to shoot everything tight because you don't have a set, fine.
Yep.
I'm a DP man, but that'll be on my tombstone. Good audio is the most important, because beautiful images and bad audio don't mix, but great audio and okay images works just fine if the content's there, you know. Audio's everything. And it pains me to say that, but it's the truth, and it is what it is.
So John, so now we've gone through 7 Minutes of Terror. We've walked through Tyranny. Now you've moved from Los Angeles to Omaha, and you've recently kind of have a different walk of life. But in the meantime, you've shot a music video. So what's that about? And I love the idea that you were kind of a one-man band where you're flying the drone and driving. We don't recommend that to people to do, by the way.
Thank God. Look, hey, he wasn't on a public road, so he gets a pass, right?
You're in a desert, right?
I was deep in the desert, like by Area 51 deep.
Yeah.
You know, there's no cell phone coverage. There's nobody around for tens of miles, like 50 miles. And, so I did look it up, and I'm like, you know, can you drive a drone from a moving vehicle? And it's like, only if you're literally alone in
middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was fun. I just honestly, I've been waiting for the bug to come back, the Filmmaker bug, because it's a lot of work. It can be very draining, and it, you know, you spend a lot of money on gear, and it can wear you out, like sometimes, and it kind of wore me out. So I took a little bit of a break, and I focused more on just doing corporate video work. And but a couple of years ago, I started writing music, and I kind of had the bug again, but I wasn't ready to make a movie bug. So I thought, well, let's just put out an album and make music videos, and so that's what I started doing, and then. I think I was like, I made one video, that was enough. Now I'm ready to make the movie. Now the bug is full blown. It's
yeah.
I'm back.
So you're wrapping up the final episode of Tyranny. What's next?
Well, I really want to finish the movie version. I'll finish that season finale for the web series because that's almost done anyway. But I really wanted to get the movie version done because there's just a wealth of scenes that I already shot 20 years ago that no one's ever seen before. And I've been up-resing that footage using Topaz, and it looks great. I shot it on a 1080i camera, the Sony HDV camera. It was brand new camera, just came out. This sucker right here.
Old school.
I didn't think that footage was going to hold up. I thought, the quality's not there. But I've already started making 4K versions of this footage, and it's gorgeous. It looks amazing. I can't believe how good it looks. So I'm just like, wow, I have a movie. I still have a movie. So that's my goal, and I'm sticking to it. So
John, this is great, man. So you have a fire and a passion still to get this original project completed, bring it into the modern day. There's a lot of filmmakers, a lot of new filmmakers, even some experienced ones that, you know, always have that itch and that desire to make their first feature. And what can you say to those filmmakers who are kind of standing at the precipice of making the decision or not and pulling the trigger and doing the legwork? Can you kind of explain how you synthesize all these moving parts, get them to work together, and how are you positioning yourself to be able to execute this and follow through with this feature? What are some of the things that are going on behind the scenes for you?
Again, I just feel like we can really overcomplicate things because especially when there's a plethora of new gear that's always coming out, and it's like, ooh, I can get this camera that's 8K. I can get this 12K Ursa camera. You know, on and on. It keeps going, and suddenly you're breaking the bank, going into debt with all this gear. It's all about the story and being creative, and those limitations are a blessing. You know, being stuck and being forced to, you can't paint outside these lines. Nothing's worse for art than to have, man, the sky's the limit. Like, it's a blank check. You can go as far as you want.
Yeah.
You'll never get it done.
Right.
Well, I have a philosophy that sometimes it's always better to solve it creatively than with the checkbook. You know, sometimes it just, you reach down, you figure out a way, and just somehow, some way, it just connects with the audience most of the time better. Good seeing you, John.
Hey, it's good to see both of you. Thanks again.
Talk soon. Hey guys, thanks for checking out our podcast. To watch more videos like this, subscribe to our channel. We're featuring many filmmaking guests like writers, producers, directors, and actors. You can also stream this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music if you're on the go. We'll see you in the next one.